So yesterday we looked at Abraham and Sarah, and Abraham and Sarah, although they stepped out of the will of God and went on their own, and Abraham got with Hagar and had Ishmael, God was still faithful to his promise and gave them Isaac. Now, Isaac is about 40 years old, and Abraham sends out his servant to get a wife for Isaac. And he goes, he brings her back. Her name is Rebecca, and they are married. Now, however, Rebecca is barren, just like Sarah was. So Isaac cries out to the Lord, probably day after day, day in, day out, probably. But he cries out to the Lord, and the Lord opens Rebecca's womb. So Rebecca gets pregnant. But there's a problem. The children are struggling in her womb. And she's like, what's wrong with me? So she goes to the Lord, and the Lord tells her there's two nations in her womb. And he says the older shall serve the younger. And then they have the children, the twins. Their names are Jacob and Esau. And that's what Paul begins to discuss today. So let's look at our text, Romans chapter 9. Starting in verse 10, he says, and not only this, but when Rebekah also had conceived by one man, even by our father Isaac, for the children not yet being born, nor having done any good or evil, that the purpose of God, according to election, might stand, not of works, but of him who calls, it was said to her, the older shall serve the younger. As it is written, Jacob I have loved, but Esau I have hated. Now, I know there's a whole lot there to deal with, and of course, we're not going to deal with it all today. We'll get there, Lord willing, but I just want to give an overview of what's going on here. So, again, he says, not only this, so not only did God reject Ishmael and choose Isaac, he says, not only this, he moves forward in the historical narrative to the next generation. Isaac and Rebekah got together. Notice he says not only this, but when Rebekah had conceived by one man, even our father Isaac. Now, why does it emphasize one? So in the original language, it says Rebekah when she had conceived by one. Why does it emphasize one? Well, because you can say, well, yeah, I can see that about Ishmael and Isaac, but guess what? They had two different mothers. But now it's like, one mother, one father. So when Rebekah had conceived by one, even our father Isaac, let's skip the parentheses, it was said to her, the older shall serve the younger. So there's two children in the womb. And God makes a choice. Now I said, let's skip the parentheses. Now let's back up and look at the parentheses. So these children in the womb, what is their state? What's true about them? Well, let's see. 11, for the children not yet being born, nor having done anything good or evil, that the purpose of God, according to election, might stand. There's that word election. Not of works, but of him who calls, it was said to her, the older shall serve the younger. So these two children are still in the womb. They haven't done anything good or bad. And God makes a choice. And he says the older, which is only a couple, maybe minutes older, because they're twins, but of course one came out first. He makes a choice, says the older shall serve the younger. Now, naturally, it should be the younger serves the older. Even if he's a minute older, the younger should serve him. However, that's not the case. God made a choice, and that's what I want to talk about today. Now, remember at the beginning of this study, I summarize the first 11 chapters like this. In order for the obedience of faith to be carried out in your life, you must understand your condemnation without Christ, your justification by Christ, and your election in Christ. And that's what we are dealing with here in chapter 9. Notice in verse 11, it says that the purpose of God according to election might stand, your election in Christ. So, what I want to deal with today is how in the world does this teaching, this doctrine of election, of God making a choice, how in the world does that produce the obedience of faith in your life? How does that work? I mean, it seems to be unfair to me. I mean, these two innocent children, they haven't done anything good or bad. They aren't even born. And I mean, the older should get the birthright. The older should get all the blessings. But God makes a decision in the womb. The children can make a choice. God makes a choice and chooses the younger over the older. That seems unfair. How in the world does election, God choosing, produce the obedience of faith in one's life? Well, how does it produce the obedience of faith in your life, in my life? First of all, what does our obedience come from? What does Jesus say? If you love me, you will keep my commandments. What does John say? That this is love, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not a burden. We obey God because we love him. Now, there are a lot of people who have a problem with election, God choosing. But let's see what that means to the Christian, to the one who has put his faith in Christ. See, if you are a Christian, you were born dead in your sin. You were born hating God. You were only concerned about yourself. You loved yourself. You loved your lust. And as you develop and got older and older, your sin just manifested itself more and more and more. You were on the highway to hell. And God is holy and righteous. He should have just left you there to perish forever under his wrath, but he didn't. God chose you before you were ever born, before you had done anything good or evil, even in eternity past. God chose you. He set his love upon you. I'm just going to use my name, but insert your name. If you truly live by faith in Christ, insert your name. So God said, Ivan, I want him. And God looks at his son in heaven and says, son, I want you to go into this cursed world. And I want you to redeem Ivan. I want you to save Ivan. I want you, because Ivan cannot keep my law perfectly, which I demand. I need you to do it for him. And because Ivan has so much sin, every millisecond is flooded with his sin. I need you to go. And I need you to bear every one of Ivan's sins on yourself. And I need you to suffer my infinite wrath I have against Ivan. And I need you to raise again and forever pray, interceding for Ivan, holding him in your hand that he is never lost until you bring him here. Will you do that, son? And Jesus says, I will. So Jesus comes into this world. Jesus lives a perfectly righteous life with Ivan on his mind. Jesus goes to that cross. And as he takes the nails, as he takes the whip, as he suffers the infinite wrath of God, saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? He's thinking about, I'm doing this for Ivan. When Jesus Christ raises from the dead, he's like, I did this for Ivan. I'm doing this for Ivan. When Jesus Christ ascends back into heaven, he has Ivan on his mind. When Jesus Christ sits down at the right hand of God, he's thinking about Ivan. When Jesus prays to God, he's thinking about Ivan. Now, as I said, insert your name. He chose you. Does that not cause your heart to overflow with love? Listen, if it were on my choices change all the time. There'll be no hope. But it's not on my choice. It's because of God's choice.